Welcome, seekers of truth and bearers of the unseen weight. The world is shifting, and those who were destined to receive their divine inheritance are watching as others scramble to hold on to what was never truly theirs. But there's a cost to defying divine order, a price they never saw coming. For years, many believed that they could manipulate fate, that they could take what did not belong to them and never be held accountable. They built their foundations on deception, amassed fortunes through stolen blessings, and convinced themselves that power could overwrite destiny. But what they failed to recognize is that divine justice does not operate on human terms. It is patient, precise, and inevitable. There are moments in history where the illusion of control shatters, and we are witnessing one of those moments now. Those who once walked with pride, believing themselves above consequence, are beginning to stumble. The chosen ones, long denied their rightful inheritance, are watching the scales tip in their favor, not because they fought for it, but because the time of reckoning has arrived. As the old saying goes, what is written in the heavens cannot be erased by the hands of men. Today, we uncover a reality too many refuse to acknowledge. Those who hoarded what belongs to the chosen ones are watching their empires crumble. Their refusal to restore what was stolen is setting off a chain reaction, and the consequences are unfolding in ways they never expected. Stay tuned, because by the end of this, you'll see why justice is never delayed, only perfectly timed. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Truth isn't always easy to hear, but it's necessary. Now, let's dive in. They thought they could build an empire on what was never meant for them. At first, it seemed like they had succeeded. They stood tall, untouchable, thriving off the blessings that were never rightfully theirs. Wealth, status, and influence became their fortress. But no one builds on stolen ground without consequences. What was taken in secret is now being exposed in broad daylight, and the unraveling of their false prosperity is impossible to ignore. The very foundations they stood on have started to crack, and the illusion of power they clung to is slipping through their fingers. History repeats itself. Kingdoms built on deception always fall, no matter how powerful they once seemed. Those who tried to secure their future by hoarding the inheritance of the chosen ones are now realizing that ill-gotten gains come with a hidden expiration date. The riches they stored up, thinking they were securing their legacy, are turning to dust before their eyes. Companies they thought were unshakable are collapsing overnight. Influence they once wielded with ease is now being stripped away. Their name, once spoken with admiration, is now being associated with failure and disgrace. This isn't coincidence, it's divine justice. The wealth they took was never meant for them, and because they refused to return it, it is being forcefully taken away. And it's not just financial loss. The decay runs deeper. Mental torment, restlessness, and a heavy cloud of misfortune follow them wherever they go. Relationships that once supported them are breaking down. Their ability to make clear decisions is clouded with fear and confusion. The security they once felt in their stolen position is now replaced with paranoia as they sense that everything they built is on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, the chosen ones are watching from the sidelines, not with vengeance, but with the certainty that what was always theirs is being restored. The time of waiting is over. No longer do they have to beg, fight, or demand their inheritance back. It is returning to them naturally, as those who held it illegally are losing their grip. The shift is undeniable. The reversal is happening. Those who thought they could rewrite destiny are learning that no one can escape divine order. The ones who refuse to pay back what was never theirs are realizing too late that wealth gained through deception carries a price. What they stole, they must now repay, not just in material loss, but in spiritual consequence. The time of reckoning has arrived, and no one can escape the weight of divine justice. The unraveling is here, and those who held on to stolen blessings will soon have nothing left. They convinced themselves that they had secured their future, that their deception would remain buried beneath layers of influence, wealth, and manipulation. But divine justice does not operate on human timelines, nor does it forget a single debt. The chosen ones were promised an inheritance that transcended material wealth. It was a birthright, a divine decree that could not be overwritten. Yet, those who took what was never theirs assumed that because they faced no immediate consequence, they were safe. But every action, every decision, and every injustice accumulates. Time does not erase wrongdoing. It only postpones its reckoning. The debt that was left unpaid is now demanding collection, and it comes at a cost that is beyond anything they could have imagined. When divine justice moves, it does not merely correct an imbalance. It restores what was taken and strips away what was never meant to be held. Look at what is happening. What once seemed invincible is now fragile. What once thrived effortlessly is now barely holding together. Wealth that was once overflowing is now draining at an alarming rate. Business empires built on stolen blessings are collapsing under the weight of their own deception. Partnerships that were once rock solid are breaking apart. And families that once stood as pillars of influence are being torn apart by internal strife. But this is not merely about financial downfall. The curse of the unpaid debt runs deeper. There is a kind of suffering that money cannot fix, a torment that cannot be silenced by distractions or denial. Those who refuse to restore what was never theirs are now being haunted, not by ghosts, but by the undeniable consequences of their own choices. The peace they once had is gone. The confidence they once carried has turned into anxiety. They sense something slipping away, something intangible yet unmistakable, their control over the reality they built. What happens when the universe demands payment for a stolen inheritance? The answer is unfolding before our very eyes. The more they struggle to hold on to their wealth, the faster it vanishes. The more they attempt to regain their influence, the more they are ignored and forgotten. The world that once revolved around them is moving on without them, and they are left wondering how everything unraveled so quickly. And yet, they still have not fully grasped the weight of what is happening. They blame the economy. They blame unforeseen circumstances. They tell themselves that it is just a phase, that they will rise again, that they can rebuild what they lost. But this is no ordinary fall. This is the divine balance being restored. This is what happens when you take what is not yours and refuse to return it. There are no shortcuts. No amount of strategy, wealth, or power can undo what has already been set in motion. Those who refuse to acknowledge their wrongdoing are only making their suffering worse. The longer they hold on to what does not belong to them, the more severe the consequences become. And as time passes, their ability to restore what was taken diminishes. The opportunity for redemption is not endless. It is fleeting. And for many, it is already too late. Meanwhile, the chosen ones do not have to fight for what is being returned to them. They do not have to beg, plead, or prove their worth. What is theirs is already making its way back into their hands. And unlike those who stole it, they do not need to manipulate, deceive, or strategize to keep it. Their inheritance is protected by something far greater than human power. It is backed by divine decree. This is the silent transfer, the shift that is happening without announcement, without negotiation, without force. It is not coming. It is already here. Those who spent years building their lives on deception are now watching everything slip away, and those who remain steadfast in their truth are finally stepping into what was always meant for them. The greatest irony is that the chosen ones do not need to fight for their inheritance. It is being delivered to them naturally, while those who held onto stolen blessings are now the ones fighting desperately to keep what they were never meant to have. But no battle will change the outcome. No resistance will stop the inevitable. What belongs to the chosen will always find its way home. They never expected this. They thought they could hoard what was never theirs indefinitely, that they could rewrite divine order and get away with it. For years, they convinced themselves that they had won, that their deception had become reality. But what they failed to understand is that divine justice does not move hastily. It moves strategically. At first, the cracks were small. A failed investment here, a soured relationship there. It was easy to dismiss, easy to explain away. But the cracks did not stop. They deepened. The very structures they built to ensure their success began working against them. Trusted advisors became enemies. Businesses that once seemed unstoppable faced inexplicable downfall. Their wealth, once seemingly infinite, began to drain in ways they could not control. Some of them began to sense it, the unease, the creeping realization that something was wrong. Their plans were failing for no logical reason. Their health began to suffer. No amount of effort seemed to turn things around. And then, the worst realization of all. The more they tried to cling to what they took, the faster it slipped away. This is the curse of the withholder. It is not just a loss of material wealth. It is a loss of peace, of stability, of purpose. It is a slow, agonizing decline that cannot be stopped because it is not driven by external forces, but by spiritual law. What was never meant for them will never bring them true prosperity. And the longer they refuse to return what is owed, the more their suffering intensifies. There is something uniquely terrifying about being unable to fix what is falling apart. These are people who, for years, believed themselves to be in control. They manipulated circumstances, people, and even their own destinies to maintain their power. But now, all of their usual methods are failing them. Influence is fading. Authority is being stripped away. The world they built for themselves is rejecting them, and they have no way to stop it. The torment is not just external, it is internal. Their minds, once sharp and calculating, are now clouded with confusion and anxiety. Sleep evades them. Restlessness consumes them. They sense something they cannot name, an inevitable force moving against them, and the worst part? There is nothing they can do to stop it. And yet the chosen ones are not suffering alongside them. In fact, the chosen ones are rising, not by force, not by effort, but by alignment. The more the withholders lose, the more the rightful inheritors gain. Resources are appearing. Opportunities are opening. The very wealth that was once locked away from them is being returned, not through struggle, but through divine intervention. This is what they never saw coming. They believed that power was theirs to take, that inheritance could be stolen and never reclaimed. But divine justice does not operate like human systems. There is no loophole, no bribery, no manipulation that can alter it. When the time of restoration arrives, it is absolute. And now, the final blow, the realization that it was never theirs to begin with. They spent years clinging to something that was only ever temporary, and now that it is being taken away, they are left with nothing. No legacy, no lasting impact, no real power. What was built on deception cannot stand, and as the foundations crumble, so does their illusion of control. Meanwhile, the chosen ones are not merely receiving what was stolen. They are stepping into an inheritance far greater than what was taken from them. Because their inheritance is not just material. It is spiritual, generational, unshakable. What they lost was only a fraction of what is being restored. The ones who refuse to return what was never theirs are learning too late that wealth gained through deception carries a price. The debt they ignored is now collecting payment, and the cost is beyond what they can bear. The unraveling is reaching its peak, and those who thought they could escape judgment are now seeing the truth. No one outruns divine justice. This is the moment they feared the most. The realization that everything they built is slipping through their fingers. The ones who once held power, who once walked with confidence, now carry the weight of their own deception. They spent years convincing themselves that they were untouchable, that they could manipulate fate and hold on to what was never theirs. But reality has proven otherwise. The unraveling is no longer a theory. It is happening in real time. Every failed venture, every broken relationship, every sleepless night is a reminder that they were never in control. They see it now, but it is too late. They had their chance to restore what they had taken. They had the opportunity to correct their mistakes. Instead, they chose to cling tighter, hoping that by sheer force of will, they could stop the inevitable. But divine justice does not negotiate. The chosen ones, the rightful inheritors, no longer have to watch from the sidelines. What was withheld from them is returning, not in bits and pieces, but in abundance. And this is what terrifies the withholders the most. Not just that they are losing, but that the very ones they sought to suppress are now rising beyond what they ever imagined. This is not just about reclaiming material wealth. It is about restoration on a divine level. The chosen ones are stepping into authority, influence, and favor that goes beyond anything they lost. What was taken was only a fraction of what is now being given to them. They are walking into a season of unshakable prosperity, while those who refuse to restore what was never theirs are entering a season of irreversible loss. For the withholders, there is no way out now. The time to make things right has passed, and they are left with nothing but the consequences of their own greed. They thought they could rewrite destiny, but in the end, destiny was never theirs to control. This is the final chapter of their illusion. The ones who thought they could steal the inheritance of the chosen are now watching as everything falls apart. And the ones they oppressed? They are walking into their rightful place, untouched by the chaos, untouched by the destruction. Because what belongs to them was always meant to return. It was only a matter of time. We are standing at the turning point of an era. The unraveling is not just beginning. It is in full motion. Those who spent years hoarding what was never meant for them are now losing everything. while the chosen ones are stepping into their divine inheritance without having to lift a finger. What side of this shift are you on? If you found truth in this message, make sure to subscribe. The journey doesn't end here. There's more to uncover, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay awake, stay ready, and remember, what is stolen will always find its way home.